terms of introductions, first we'll just go kind of how I see it on my screen. So Tobin, if you want to introduce yourself, kind of your background in the unmanned space, and also what Vantage is doing, and then we'll just go around in a circle. And you're on mute, my friend.
There we go. You'd think in the pandemic I'd figure out how to use the mute button, but
it's a drinking game, man. You got to drink every time someone speaks, not when they're muted.
So I'm Tobin Fisher. I'm CEO and co-founder at Vantage Robotics. As far as my background in the space, probably like everyone in this group, grew up making RC planes and flying RC rockets and all of that good stuff. This is my third high-tech startup. Started out micro fuel cells, then mobile software. And, I really was excited about drones just in the challenge of bringing together a product that incorporates software and hardware and sensors and all of these different elements that I really enjoyed working with in the past. And, when I started, I really saw an opportunity, sort of stemming from my days at IDEO, where developed really polished consumer products, to bring the drone space from kind of a hobbyist world to something more polished and ready for prime time. And that was back in 2013. Shipped a bunch of consumer products after that, which was super exciting. But have subsequently transitioned more to commercial first, driven by a big waiver with the FAA and CNN, and now super excited to be part of supplying government drones as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Tobin. Chris, do you want to go next?
Yes. So I'm Chris Roberts. I'm the CEO of Parrot's North American operation, Parrot Inc., and I'm also the Global Chief Sales and Marketing Officer at Parrot Drone. Myself, I've been plus 25 years, despite my youthful look, in the tech industry, and 10 years in UAV. So I was lucky enough to be with Parrot at the beginning of the drone revolution. So this is 10 years ago when we developed the first consumer drone, the AR drone. And from there, we've basically built 4.5 million drones globally. And we've been transitioning from consumer drone segment to the commercial and professional markets into what Parrot is today. For those that don't know, there's a bit more to Parrot than may meet the eye. We are European headquartered. Having said that, our American business, we've been in the US for 16 years. Parrot as a company, we've got a heritage in high-tech software development, and we're in our 26th year. Within the Parrot group, so you've got Parrot Drone, which is the specialist for micro quads, as well as SenseFly, which is a Swiss fixed wing company. You have the world leader in photogrammetry software in the group, Pix4D, another Swiss-based company, and also the American-based company, Microsense, for precision sensors. So today, as I mentioned, we're really pushing and focusing on the enterprise, public safety, and we'll get into that during the session. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. Adam, you're next on my set of squares.
Yeah, my name's Adam Rhee. I'm co-founder and CEO of Skydio. So echoing a little bit of what Tobin said, I grew up flying radio-controlled airplanes and took it way too seriously. I actually traveled all over the country flying in aerobatics competitions and won a couple of national championships doing that, which is a segment of the world that most people don't even know exists. It's incredibly nerdy, but it was a lot of fun. And I've learned a lot about flight and aerodynamics, and in particular, kind of learned about control systems at an intuitive level. And I was fortunate to be starting grad school at MIT around the time when you could first take RC airplanes and put computers and sensors on them and start to get them to do smart stuff. And that really became an obsession for me. So that's where I met my co-founders. And the motivation for starting Skydio in 2014 was looking out and seeing all the amazing things that people wanted to do with drones. You know, the concepts are incredible of what the technology can enable, but feeling like autonomy, being able to trust the drone to perform useful tasks on its own, was just a kind of key foundational technology that was missing, that would really open up the industry. And one of the analogies that I use is kind of if you think about the early days of the PC industry, the transition from the command prompt, where, you know, if you had an expert programmer that was used to working at a command line interface, they could do a lot of amazing things. But the transition to the graphical user interface, where things became more software defined, really opened up the PC world, and that revolution continues today. And that's kind of how we think about drones. I think the technology is still nascent compared to what's possible. And we never really subscribed to this narrative that DJI had won and the whole game was over, because we saw so much possibility for what these products could and should be. And we're at a really exciting point now, I think, for the industry. We're starting to see this come to life with our customers. So we have customers basically in every segment, from consumer, enterprise, public safety, defense. And it's really exciting for us to see the products and technology mature and see our users and customers benefit from products that are smart in ways that enable them to do things that they wouldn't otherwise think they could do, and enable them to operate way more efficiently. And I still think the whole thing is early days. So I'm very optimistic about the space where we are now and where we're going.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. Rambo, you're up next.
Hey everyone, Thomas Rambo, CEO and founder of Altavian, and now senior director over at FLIR. In fairness to Randall, we started this conversation before any of that happened, so this is primarily with my Altavian hat on. I've been involved in aviation pretty much as soon as I can walk. Both my grandfathers were involved. In fact, one of my grandfathers flew B-29. Went to college for aerospace engineering. And at the University of Florida, there was a lab there that was involved with micro-air vehicles. World-leading lab, 10 years running. The micro-air vehicle competition, which took about a 5-ish foot vehicle down to about 6 inches over those 10 years. We spun the technology off with the Army Corps of Engineers to go save lives. And so the leading cause of death for wildlife biologists are low-altitude aircraft crashes. We actually had a student at UF regretfully lost their life in one of these accidents over the Florida Everglades. So we partnered up. We built the Nova, which is a fixed-wing aircraft, to go do environmental surveys, predominantly photogrammetry. But with our contacts with the Corps, we very quickly discovered the military market. And so from a very early stage of the company, we were straddling both commercial and defense. And so it's been interesting to see both of those markets materialize over what would have been about 10 years. Altavian would have been 10 in February. So I've been doing this since 2011. Excited to be a part of this, and yeah, definitely looking forward to where the industry is going, especially with some of the changes that are coming up now with a lot of the different regulations that are really promoting U.S. interests.
Perfect. Thanks, Rambo. And George, last but not least.
Yeah, thank you, Randall. Super excited to be here and to be part of this group. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'll provide a quick background on myself and then a high-level perspective on how we view the industry before we dive in. So, like Tobin and Adam, ever since I was a little kid, I was obsessed with fixed-wing aircraft, single-rotor helicopters, ultimately drones. My first drone was the AR drone from Parrot. And as I became more passionate, specifically about drones and with that technology, I started gaining this really deep conviction and a strong belief that one day drones will fundamentally improve how we work and live. But over the past 5 years, I mean, most other drone companies have failed. The industry hit its trough of disillusionment in 2017. Lots of VCs lost money. China monopolized a lot of the market. And at the same time, drones didn't really change. They just stayed as single use case flying cameras. But where we are today, echoing some of the thoughts from others here in the group, we're undergoing a little bit of a paradigm shift where technology has reached an inflection point, regulation is coming into focus, and markets are shifting away from China. So overall, I think the timing in the industry has never been better for companies like us. Super optimistic about the future. And I'm really excited to help make that originally envisioned future of drones ubiquitous reality.
Perfect. Thanks, George. And the reason that you five are together and lumped into a group is the blue sUAS concept, but that was really born out of the SRR program. And each of you were a part of that SRR program. And Chris, could you just give us an understanding of what were the objectives initially for SRR? When was that program really announced? And what kind of did the stages of SRR look like?
It's a good question because the SRR program goes back quite a few years, and what brought what is now the 5 of us together, which was originally 6 at the beginning, was the years that the SRR didn't probably get any traction in terms of what they were trying to create and trying to deliver. So they basically called in April 2019. So as I mentioned, there were 6 originally in the first selection by the US Army and the Defense Innovation Unit, the DIU, to develop the short-range reconnaissance prototypes for the military use. So the objective was to identify some manufacturers that had could meet some standards of outstanding security. So obviously being cyber secure, had performance and that could be easy to use and have scalability, and all at a dollar that was good for the DoD, and that meant that they could actually get technology, up-to-date technology, and not wait the 5 to 10 years that some of the sort of more traditional programs were taking to come to fruition. So this is really the objectives of it. From a Parrot perspective, it was an ideal opportunity for us because we already had the Anafi platform, and this is a proven drone that's already plus 100,000 units around the world, already used by sort of Royal Navy in the UK, French Army, Swiss Army, and various police and fire departments, etc. So it gave us a good base of a real drone to start with this program. So this was the basic objectives to start with.
Perfect. I
Rambo, do you mind
appreciate
if I
that.
jump in?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Just maybe a little bit of additional background of that SRR program. I think the P spec that the Army provided, the performance specification, the official requirement that all of us had to meet or exceed, was actually based off of a 2013 requirement that the Army already had put together. And then in 2017, when the Army banned use of DJI platforms, that kind of accelerated the need for this capability. And so we first learned of it towards the end of 2018, the SRR program. The purpose, of course, was to provide warfighters with the capability to see what's over the next hill or around the next corner. And all of us got kickstarted at the beginning of 2019 to build these next generation systems.
So that's a pretty quick development cycle. I mean, for the start of 2019, and granted, and the Anafi already existed, the Snap drone already existed, Skydio already had a product in conception that fit in this. Rambo, just a quick question to you: was the Ion in early 2019 a thing?
Not to the same level that some of these guys had it as well. So. We're taking a little bit different slant on this. So we were involved in that program office. So that was the military side that I referenced in that story. And George is absolutely right. So this has been around since 2013. The main customer utilizes 2 fixed wing platforms, a bigger one and kind of a smaller one. And so they knew they had this requirement for something small, something that was VTOL, something that could hover, didn't meet the over the hill sort of short-term requirements for infantry. And, we were seeing things, at conferences and sort of at trade shows that, well, maybe the funding is going to be there, maybe they'll start to program it. And so we had developed a prototype vehicle in anticipation of this. So we had a technology demonstrator at that time, but not something commercialized, like some of these fine gentlemen around me.
Gotcha. So I guess the next kind of follow-up to that is individually, what made you feel like, I mean, there's obviously a government program, but what made you feel like it was worthwhile to put the effort to change what was likely either a consumer or an industrial product to fit the specs for these military programs? And Tobin, maybe I'll start with you. When you see this SRR program pop up, how did you evaluate the opportunity, and really what did you see as Vantage's advantage in participating in the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing that I saw was just, I think every engineer goes into engineering with the hopes of having a chance of making some sort of positive impact. And so I think, seeing the opportunity to make a contribution to national security was certainly really exciting. And then as well, we definitely were excited to build off of what we had done with Snap for sure. But what really excited us was the fact that we as a team had this experience in innovating on drones at every level, motor controllers, flight control, cameras, airframes, and we really were excited to use this chance to push the limit of what's possible and really create something that was made from the ground up for this use case. And it's an amazing opportunity just from an engineering perspective, in that it's these systems are they're intended to be modestly priced, but still in terms of dollars per gram, there's few things in the world that sort of command this level of value, and it really gave us this platform to innovate and get into advanced composites and novel manufacturing techniques, and that opportunity to really be on the forefront of what's possible engineering is something that I really cherish and felt was an amazing experience for us.
And do you feel, and anyone can really answer this, but do you feel like the being focused on a defense use case and a defense user base, that there were new challenges in manufacturing as engineers, or do you feel like it was just another set of specs that you were trying to meet? I mean, were the pressures different for any of you working in a military program coming from a commercial or consumer background?
Yeah, certainly for us, it was, the challenges were all at a significantly higher level. For Snap, we designed it to fly at 20 minutes and have an 89-degree field of view. For Vesper, we developed it to fly for nearly an hour and go down to less than a 1-degree field of view and see in the dark. And so, it was a lot of very similar challenges, but we really had to push ourselves more than a level beyond where we had gone before with consumer. And I think that it was kind of like our, sort of, if we're a car company, like our race car program, in the sense that it pushed us to develop technology that I don't think we ever would have had the latitude to really develop within the space we were working in previously.
Yeah, I understand.
I think we all get to take, I was just saying, and now with that said, I think we all get to take advantage of that and leverage it in other industries and other markets.
Yeah, George, you were the guy I was going to push that to, because when we first met in 2017, you were making the Teal 1, which was meant to go fast, and it was a different flight experience, right? That was the precipice of when we met, and thermal wasn't necessarily on your initial or immediate purview. But to go from having a drone that flies fast and making a race car for a different reason, now you step into this government defense space where you have a different punch list of items and a different way of communicating with a different clientele. So could you tell a little bit about your experience with Teal, bringing Teal into the SRR program?
Yeah, I don't want to turn this into an echo chamber, but I think we're going to hear a lot of the same themes from a lot of the companies here, and certainly agree with Tobin that the first exciting thing was to help make a positive impact and fully support our government and military where possible. At the same time, it was a great opportunity for us to produce this and develop this next gen technology. It was a great forcing function for us to continue to advance our capabilities and the core technology. And now coming out of this, as all of us are approved and trusted vendors for the U.S. government, we have some really cool technology that I think has a lot of use across verticals and markets, and is now confidently at parity with DJI or even exceeding DJI capabilities in certain areas.
Yeah, and so this question's for Adam. Going through the process of SRR, and I know that there were fly-offs and there were different benchmarks, different times that you had to show the technology. Was there anything that surprised you, either what you thought was going to be the outcome, or like Tobin and George were mentioning, where technology was created at a more rapid rate just because you were being pushed by this program?
I would say a couple things there. I mean, I think it's not directly the question, but I think at a macro level, one of the really surprising things, if you think about it, is how, and this speaks to the history of the SRR program, but the best positioned companies in the world to deliver the technology that the soldier needed, in most cases, were not traditional defense contractors. And I think that's a really interesting thing to reflect on. And it's a theme that I think we're seeing in a lot of areas where the pace of innovation and the kinds of products that are developed in the kind of commercial world, especially in kind of consumer electronics and software-driven thinking, there's something really powerful in that development paradigm, in that development cycle. And there are these pockets of technology where the leading edge of what you can get is coming from that world. You can see that in the cloud, like when the military wants cloud provider, they don't go to defense contractors, they go to in most cases major technology companies. You can see that with phones. Every soldier is carrying a phone. Those are not supplied by traditional defense contractors, even though there are some specializations for defense. And I think that's, you can see this with SRR now, but I think that's likely to be the case for drones for the future. The pace of innovation in these kind of small, light, super easy to use devices that serve a bunch of different markets in the non-military world are also incredibly useful tools for the military with the right level of specialization and customization. And that's really what drew us to the program. In terms of surprises going through the process, I think we learned a lot, and I think the big highlight for us for sure was getting to spend a lot of time on the ground with the end user and having them use our product, get feedback from them. And a lot of what we learned there had a pretty substantial impact on what we ended up delivering. But probably the most positive surprise to me was seeing the forward thinking and agility within the military itself, which, I didn't have a lot of direct experience previously working directly with the Army or other folks there. But we've really been astounded by the just sort of forethought and agility that they had with this program, and are pretty excited about where it's going.
Perfect. So a lot of what we've talked about thus far has been about SRR, and we've mentioned Blue sUAS. But Blue sUAS was really created after the SRR fly-offs and all of that. So can someone, and maybe Rambo, could you give us a distinction of what is the difference between the SRR program and Blue sUAS, and what does Blue sUAS actually mean for you five as manufacturers?
Yeah, sure thing. So the SRR as a military program has got some specific requirements and asks in order to serve the warfighter. And some of those things don't exactly line up to the commercial market. So radio frequency is a perfect example of this. So the military uses very specific frequencies, and commercial users want to just be able to plug in and fly, just like you would, turn on your laptop and use Bluetooth or use Wi-Fi. So things like that, started to see a differentiation in the product. And, while the military is the largest single buyer, largest single customer of drones, the commercial market, sort of in the other spec, so very few customers buying a lot of drones, commercial markets, a lot of customers buying fewer drones, is still equally enticing and equally large. And so to leverage the work done out of SRR, Blue Force was born. And so this was a government initiative to help to certify the vendors for things like cybersecurity, for things like supply chain security, to make sure that as we continue to try to promote domestic manufacturing, there is a level of comfort for those buyers knowing that we've got a trusted supply chain, a series of trusted vendors that can go forth. So the Blue Force was really spun out of that to really focus in on that civil and commercial market.
Gotcha. And George, maybe you could add to what does being Blue sUAS provide you? What can you do that maybe someone that falls out of Blue sUAS can't do?
Yeah, for sure. I'll speak a little bit to that, and then also wanted to quickly build on something that Adam said, where you don't see any big defense contractors in this group. I think all of us know that many of those defense contractors did apply for the program, but given less capability and 10x more cost, they weren't a participant. And I think, as Adam said, there's a really positive trend in the government and in the military to start adopting commercial leading edge technology where you're not relying on big defense contractors who, for lack of a better term, just bend steel and giving them, requirements for autonomy and AI and these types of capabilities. So really exciting to see the direction that the military is going, and I think all of us have an opportunity to positively impact that. With Blue UAS, exactly what Thomas said, we are now, a group of approved and trusted vendors for, Group 1 sUAS. I think it was announced a week ago that we're going to be the only drone-related offerings on GSA moving forward. I hope that the group continues to grow and expand. I think there's opportunity for others in the market to join over time as well. But initially, we're now a group that anyone in the federal government or at a state and local level can immediately procure.
And with the products that you have today, are those the only products that are approved Blue? Or if you made a new variant or a new product entirely, would that also follow you as a company, or does that need to be vetted separately?
Thomas, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, sure. A little bit of a mix there. So not speaking for the federal government by any means, we don't just have a carte blanche, pass. I mean, if we do produce new products, there is still that vetting process that would need to be carried out. There's precedence now, and so it's a lot easier being on this side of the fence, knowing what we have to do to go through that process. New products will still need to be verified in some way.
Okay, perfect. So we've talked about SRR, which was a military program, and Blue sUAS, which is really GSA capabilities and being an approved vendor for the federal government. But what does this whole, what did this whole program create for the industrial market? How will the industrial market benefit from the expanded use of drones within the government? And Chris, do you maybe want to take a first stab at that?
Yes, I think firstly the program, the Blue sUAS, it puts a framework and it raises the profile about the Chinese drones. So, i.e., not to use them, not to trust them, etc., etc. So this program has, at last, put a framework around it, not just for federal or military use, but also for industry and the private sector. So, from our perspective, it means that the program validates the technology, that it's been tested and that it's proven against the rigorous standards that the Blue sUAS and the various testing that they require. And in a certain way, it stops a lot of the doubt and a lot of the conversation. So this is the Blue sUAS. These are the products. These are the vendors. And we can take this into the enterprise space, into the public safety, and it really stops a lot of the weaving conversation that's been going on for too long, and DJI having the whole market to themselves. Basically, this is what it means for us.
Right. So it's interesting because not everyone is in your shoes, Chris, where you have SenseFly and you have Pix4D and you have MicaSense, but I think specifically Pix4D, where to make a drone then viable in the commercial space, you need to do more than just have a payload and be able to fly 30 minutes. You need to be able to do something with data. And I think in the previous conversations I've had under this platform, a lot of it is like the future is all about data processing, whether it's AI or deliverables to a client. For maybe everyone else that you've had to then go, you talk to the government and get them what they want with the Blue sUAS products, but then you have to go into the commercial market and create an ecosystem that looks similar to what DJI has built over the past 5-6 years. What does that look like? I mean, I think is collaboration easy for you in a market that has been so heavily dominated by one player, or are they looking for other partners and collaboration in creating, you know, software solutions and things like that for your products has been easy?
Well, let's be clear. We know the drone industry is not easy, so it's a tough industry for sure. So this is, and we can see this with the companies that are not with us anymore that were a few years ago. So we know it's a tough race. Yes, there's collaborations ready to happen. So it's yes, the industry, it needs credible alternatives. It needs secure drones. It needs the proven robustness and that this program can deliver. So if you're given a full system and a solution, yes, with the software and the payloads and the processing and everything else that can be trusted, that yes, you've got a credible story. But yes, of course, it's not quick and it's a tough job to do. But we think the opportunity is in front of us, and we think also that the blue sUAS and the SRR is really not just for the US, but on a global basis, has really catapulted, if you like, the profile of having a trusted and secure drone and software and et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. And this question initially will be for Adam. That I know that in 2019 you released your enterprise variant of your product, and now you have also these government programs that you're working on. Does that focus that you kind of jump back and forth between a federal or a government or military drone program and a commercial user, industrial user, split your attention, split your resources, or how do you manage that so that you can kind of bridge the gap rather than be, having to funnel all your resources into one or the other?
Yes, there are certainly some differences. There are a few product differences that are important, but I think, and there's very significant go-to-market differences. I mean, the sales and marketing activities for these different industries are quite different. But I think that the primary story is actually one of convergence. We see very similar challenges and opportunities from a product perspective that span basically all of our customers. I mean, if you just think about sort of the foundational things that make a drone product, almost all of that stuff is common across all these users. Like, nobody wants shorter flight time. Everybody cares about the camera quality. Being able to zoom in and see things very far away is nearly ubiquitous for any kind of user. Nobody wants to crash more. The really hard technical challenges that go into making a good drone product are common, and I think that's one of the reasons why you see the same products showing up in all these different markets and use cases. So Skydio 2, we have people, if you check out social media, we have people making all kinds of amazing, cool videos, following themselves on snowmobiles and mountain biking, and had some people go skydiving. We don't recommend that with a drone, but if you want to try, go for it. So that product is being used for, it's basically like a flying GoPro, but we have departments of transportation using it to inspect bridges. We have public safety agencies using it for tactical situational awareness. We have people doing crime scene mapping with it. And the reason why it's good at all those things is because it has really advanced autonomy. It's not going to crash. You can program it to do autonomous actions on its own. And that shared core is common across basically every use case. And that's where we make our biggest investments. I mean, if you look at our engineering efforts at Skydio, 95+% of the work that we do generalizes across basically every user and every use case. Now, there are certainly some important differences, and at the software and the hardware layer, we do tailor things. But I think part of what makes our company and our platform work is the commonality between these things. And we wouldn't go into a market, we wouldn't go into a use case unless we felt like we had something really spectacular to deliver to customers.
Gotcha. So we touched a little bit ago about collaboration, and I'm looking at my screen over here, which has the Facebook thing, which people are asking questions, and I also got a text message with a question, and it's a question that I have as well. With all 5 of you, in essence, being competitors in the same space, do you look at this as kind of like a winner takes all thing where one of you is going to come out victorious with a sword in hand and everyone else is going to be kind of laying at your feet? Or is this an opportunity where domestic or non-Chinese manufacturers of drone technology are just going to kind of work together to create a collaborative pull towards new technology? And Tobin, can you just talk about maybe collaboration within this group and then collaboration within the industry as well?
Sure. So yeah, I've been having conversations with basically any drone company CEO who's willing to talk to discuss the topic of how can we work together more effectively as an industry. A theme that has definitely emerged, certainly I believe in, I see across a lot of companies, is just this massive duplication of effort. And so one of the things that has been really exciting for me about the SRR program, and I really look forward to being a contributor for going forward, is us as an industry maturing and figuring out ways that we can help each other on common challenges. I've had some really good conversations with some of the folks on this panel right now to that end, and I think there's some really excited about some ways in the near term we can help each other with common software challenges in the near term, as well as common hardware challenges. We're developing a hardware product that will be released in industry that's certainly intended to solve that. And it's interesting. I think when people talk about an operating system, I think most people think about it in terms of software. But what I would argue is an operating system is an attempt to reduce duplication of effort in the computer industry. And I think what is the OS in a drone may or may not look different from that, but I think that's what really needs to emerge, is how we can work together and reduce duplication of effort so we all can be better and solve the common problems together.
Yeah, one thing this is kind of a question that I also am pulling kind of out of the air, is when you think about this industry and you think about the leaders in this industry, we obviously have the Drone Advisory Committee from the FAA, which Adam, you're a part of now, and I don't know if any of the other four are. So Adam, you might be the only one here on the Drone Advisory Committee. But when you think of drone leadership, I never thought Michael Chasen from Precision Hawk, and this is me speaking, just Randall, not a company and not for speaking for anyone else, but Michael Chasen was a guy that went to Precision Hawk from Blackboard, knew how to run a business, but was he really speaking for the industry? If you think about others that have been keynotes over trade shows and things like that, you have the former CEO of Intel. He's no longer there. So now we have to look at who is really leading this industry, who is really the people that you can go to as like the guiding lights. And I do see the Blue sUAS did this other thing, which made your 5 organizations kind of those leaders, and you 5 as being public speakers for the industry to find ways to find efficiencies and not have so much waste and create technology faster and address all of the user base. So, I mean, it is a kind of a question. How have you felt about your role now as leaders in this industry, where it's not this guy behind a desk in China that was making cool technology, and they had some token US guys, me included at one point, which would represent that publicly. But now, can you change the expectation of drone technology to where there is companies that listen to feedback from end users and implement that straight into your technology, and also give people hope for the technology moving forward, rather than just relying on marketing teams abroad to do so? That could be anyone, or you could just say that's a dumbass question.
I think that's a really important. I think that's really important, because I think you're right that for the last number of years, I think we've suffered from kind of a lack of leadership, and DJI has sort of been the elephant not in the room. Like, they have 80% market share, but they're not present, they're not listening, they're not like helping to move everything forward. And I certainly see that as part of the opportunity and the responsibility for this group. And I would just say, I think the opportunity there is, I mean, I said this at the beginning, I think it's still early days. The technology is still nascent compared to what it should be. And I think eventually what it will be, that reaches true mainstream ubiquity well beyond where we are today across all the different use cases that are out there for drones. We tend to look at everything through a product lens. Like, what can we build that makes these devices better and more useful more people. And I think the path forward is I think that mindset, less about competition and less about like trying to take market share from somebody in this particular vertical, but more like taking the long macro view of where are we now and where do we really need to go, and how do we get there together.
I appreciate that answer. Anyone else want to share something on that front?
I mean, overall, we find ourselves in a rare window of opportunity to do something special here together collectively. I don't think about things in terms of competition, and of course, we all want to grow value and create value. But you know, we're focusing on product, we're focusing on technology, we're focusing on showing what good drones can do. And I don't know where things will go in, you know, the next 5 to 10 years, other than in a, you know, very positive direction that I'm extremely optimistic about.
So I just got another text message question that I'm going to kind of fold into this, is into something that we were planning on talking about, is international markets, but I'm also talking about what DJI created. And if this whole effort is to pull market share away from the 80% and put it into domestic or non-Chinese manufacturers, there's a lot of things that DJI did over those years that was quite impressive. One being that their SDK, and the second being the ecosystem that they built around it. And because they're a Chinese manufacturer that isn't hindered by anything like Blue sUAS, they were selling globally. So this is a multifaceted question, which is, one, do you intend to have an SDK development or opportunity for people to leverage as much as maybe DJI has? And what does that look like for your company? And the second piece of this is, do you plan on selling your technology internationally, and what are the challenges to do so? And I think Parrot's probably in the most unique position here, as they're not an American company, so they have not the same rules and regulations behind it. But if whoever wants to take that, it's just kind of talking about internationalism as well as the SDK.
I'll take that, because the SDK is obviously something we don't do a good enough job of promoting, because we've had SDKs in our products since 2010. So, and we're very much about the SDK. We're very much about the ecosystem. So we have a very powerful SDK that's gone through the various generations of drones, and it exists in the Anafi USA, which is the commercialized version of the SRR. And we've got some great partners on the SDK program. And really, the SDK, this is what's adding the true depth to the usage of the drone. This takes the hardware and the software and really tailors it and adds the depth and the real usage much more. So we're really at the tip of this. So this is a very important part of our ecosystem, and we're working with some good partners globally on the SDK. In terms of the internationalization, yes, it's I mean, for us, we're already working internationally. So we've just announced last week, in fact, we've won quite a good contract with the French DGA for which is the French Defense Procurement Agency for the three main forces there, which uses the Anafi USA. So the product developed for the US SRR, and we take this, and the Army Swiss are already signed contract last year on the same thing. So what it's enabled us to do is to really we see a lot of the defense and the enterprise and also the private sector, they're looking at the SRR program, they're looking at the Blue sUAS. So this, from an international basis, has accelerated some of those programs in other countries, because they've really taken a hard look at what is quite untraditional in a certain way. You know, the defense procurement would normally be with one of the big aerospace companies. It would normally be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of the price of a lot of their equipment, versus what we're taking is what is consumer-based technology, and putting that into a very robust portable form factor that's at a price and a technology that is deliverable before it's out of date, if that makes sense. So yes, internationally we're already doing it, and this has been one of the benefits. But we see really the other markets starting to wake up to the cybersecurity, waking up to having credible alternatives to the incumbent, and also being actually having a credible offer. So this is where we are on the international, and as I say, the SDK is a super important part of our offering, which we need to do more marketing on by your comment about.
Yeah, I mean, DJI did do some things really well, and I won't say I'm an expert in comparing the SDKs, but I'm just saying that there needs to be an SDK that's robust enough that people easily develop on it. And if we're talking about your 2013 SDK to versus now, I'm sure it's gotten much better, as would anyone's. So I want to pose this question just so that it's quick answers. If your company is doing an SDK, could you raise your hand? Okay. Is your team planning on selling your product internationally? Raise your hand.
Probably are you.
Yeah. But I mean, you already are. I just because blue sUAS kind of seems like it's such a red, white, and blue program, and not a French red, white, and blue, but or an Australian red, white, and blue, but a stars and stripes program. That it just needs to be said to people that are listening and people that want to find information about you later that this is not meant to just be a U.S. military program or benefiting only GE in the U.S. or what other industrial users could be using it. So I just
Can I just chime in on this? I think it's a really important point. I think one of the most obvious, but also one of the most challenging things about the drone world is the need for an SDK and technical integrations to really make the use cases come to life, because the use cases are incredibly diverse. They span a bunch of different industries and sort of use models. And I mentioned before that we see incredible convergence in a lot of the requirements on the drone itself and the autonomy system. But the flip side of that is immediately downstream, you see incredible divergence, right? Like when an energy utility flies a drone, what they do with that data is completely different from what a public safety agency does, and is different from what a Department of Transportation does. And it's certainly different from what the military does. And so that the need to sort of take the core capabilities of the drone and then plug them into different workflows for different industries, I think is kind of central and obvious. And I do agree. I think DJI did a good job with a mobile SDK, and that enabled some folks to do some interesting stuff. But to me, one of the real interesting questions in the space that I don't think has been definitively answered yet is, what is the right platform layer? Like, what is the layer at which you can bring together enough core technology that solves the problem in such a way that it becomes very easy to build solutions for specific industries? And ideally in such a way where when you're building that solution, you don't have to be an expert in anything to do with drone hardware and navigation and anything. You can think in terms of the industry that you're working on. So I give a few examples of this. So one, which we announced, is our partnership with EagleView, which is a leader in the insurance claims processing space. So they are world-class at insurance claims processing workflows. And we work with them to deliver fully autonomous capture of a roof. It's one of the common drone use cases, but with Skydio, we're able to automate that. You go to the house, click on the roof, you say, this is what I want to inspect. It captures the whole thing, and then it seamlessly integrates with their platform, it uploads the data. And from the end customer's perspective, you just have this basically push button experience where you can process a claim with incredible efficiency and safety without having to have a person walk around on a roof. And I think that's the kind of thing that we're most excited about, where you can bring together the right technologies in the right way to deliver something that's fully seamless for the end user. And I don't think mobile SDK is necessarily the future of that. I think it made sense for DJI to do that. But I think there's an opportunity to sort of plug things in at a higher level that simplifies the experience for the end user.
So in the same vein of plugging things in, all the airframes we're talking about here are limited as far as payload capacity. And some of the questions that have come through on the Facebook link are about, do you know if there's a plan for a group 2, group 3 type blue sUAS program? And not to delve into your personal roadmaps, but are you planning on releasing something where you can have different types of payloads, different types of processing on it, to where it's not close to such a small rucksack type airframe?
I can jump in there.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Start off. I mean, and to touch on a point that Chris brought up earlier too, a lot of the inbound that we've been receiving since the Blue sUAS announcement has been international. A lot of people are following the Blue sUAS program and want to adopt the technology. And like you said, those markets are kind of waking up. We also get a lot of inbound for folks that want different payloads, different hardware on their aircraft, in addition to, using different application software. So, Teal designed its system to be modular. You can plug in different payloads, carry up to 4 pounds, and don't have immediate plans to create Group 2, Group 3 platforms. I'm excited to see who does and what innovation happens there.
Perfect. Any other comments on that?
Let me,
Tobin?
maybe let me jump in on there since since we've got probably the biggest, another platform that's probably the biggest of everybody. I know Chris has got the fixed wing line and SenseFly. So Group 2, Group 3 is kind of a whole nother beast. But in terms of Group 1, you've got sort of below certain regulatory thresholds for size and weight and sort of above all within 20 pounds. One thing that we've seen that we haven't talked about yet, but touches on the SDK, is interoperability and is how each of the platforms are going to work. Maybe not some payload to platform level, but platform to platform or platform to ground controller level. And one of the SRR and Blue Force requirements was to pick up an open protocol, or at least be friendly with other protocols. So I think most of us are either speaking Mavlink or have the ability at some point to speak Mavlink. And so that's really important when you go into cross platforms. So we take an open systems approach to this. On some of the bigger platforms, that it's easier to answer for them because I've got 4 pounds of payload I can throw on there. You can put different payloads in. I think SenseFly also flops payloads in and out. And so the ability to keep those open protocols more from just an SDK level, but from how your aircraft is going to talk to other aircraft in the future, how it's going to talk to ground stations in the future, and then finally remote ID. So how we're all going to handle remote ID in the next 18 months, I think is very critical.
Absolutely. Anyone else on that?
I'll just talk. So they're not represented here, but there are actually U.S. companies that make really high quality, bigger, heavier lift drones. So one that I mentioned off the top of my head, Free Fly Systems. They've been around for a while. They're actually one of the leaders in that space. They've got a lineup of awesome heavy lift products that are used by the cinematography industry and are now used by a bunch of industrial folks. So there are, it's not represented in this group, but there are certainly high quality offerings out there.
It's super interesting that you bring that up, though, because the reason that Tab, who's the CEO of FreeFly, would not have been a part of this conversation is he's not a Blue sUAS company. So when I talk about leadership, when I talk about exposure, when I talk about people seeing it as a secure drone, people are on the outside. So I'm going to jump ahead really quick. And George, you mentioned this earlier, where do you expect the number of Blue sUAS members to increase? Because there is going to be there are going to be requirements that are going to fall outside of maybe what you want to develop in. And there should be other people to fill those requirements, whether fixed wing, VTOL, or heavier lift products. Do you guys see that coming? Have you heard anything about that coming?
Well, I think I think what matters is just building awareness of the diversity and quality of alternatives that are out there. So, the formalism may or may not come, but I think that's the really important piece. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring up Free Fly, just so people know, that there are other things out there that are filling a need and delivering some really useful capability.
George, were you going to say something?
We're still early days. I mean, I said it all throughout last year, but 2020 was kind of the rebuilding, the start of the rebuilding of the American industrial base. In this category specifically, and like Adam says, there's other existing companies and other groups, but I think this will grow moving forward. The industrial base will continue to grow, and I think the government is going to help continue adopting these leading edge technologies and bringing more companies into the fold.
From
So,
Vantage's
oh,
side, we're sorry.
no, go ahead, Tobin.
First off, I'm excited to see it grow. I think, as Adam mentioned, there's a vast range of use cases for drones, and I expect there to be more than 5 different designs that are needed to meet those use cases, and that's something that as a company, I'm eager to support. So as I mentioned, we are going to be launching a product specifically with the goal of making it easier for other companies to enter and to offer products to this end. So it's something that really look forward as whatever leadership role we have in the industry in supporting growing that ecosystem and minimizing the duplication of effort across it.
And Tobin, if you want to stay on that, just because this is something we wanted to touch on, is manufacturer diversity. So you 5 as human beings are relatively diverse. I wouldn't say the most diverse bunch we could put together, but as manufacturers, how do you see yourselves as diverse, and what does that really bring to the table? I mean, why not just have one of you and solve the world's problem? What does diversity give to the public?
For us and for me, the thing I just love more than anything else about being part of this industry is there are so many really, really smart, really talented, really good people. And I think everyone rises to a higher level, a higher game when you're around great people. And so that's, to me, what it brings is it helps us do our best work and pushes us to a level that I know if we were in a vacuum, we wouldn't get to. And I think the more folks involved, the more good people that can be there to help push each other and do so in a constructive, collegial, collaborative way, I think helps us all make the best possible products and solve the problems that the industry faces in the most effective way.
Anyone else want to touch on diversity before I move on?
Yeah, from the military side, I think it's really interesting that for SRR, they took this acquisition approach. So again, if you take a look at sort of military systems, AeroVironment's been the kingmaker for a long time. The most systems out there are sort of deployed in the military, and they have an SRR style vehicle. The Cube or the Shrike, depending on which flavor it was, and all of the branches, so SOCOM, Army, Marines, they all have an installed base of hand controllers and radios, and they train sort of to use it. And I think it's very interesting that the acquisition choice was not to just pick that and go with it. The acquisition choice was to open up a new competition, bring new vendors in, bring new blood into the industry, and mix the pot and see what comes out. So I think just by the fact that we're all here is showing that there is a customer drive to not have a kingmaker, not have the one drone to rule them all.
And in diversity, kind of staying in that vein, and I'm going to pose this question to Adam, but I think you guys all have your own flavors of this, is Skydio clearly has a very good platform for machine learning and obstacle avoidance, and that existed before SRR, and that was part of Skydio's DNA initially. What does that technology unlock for industrial users? What ways are you putting that really smart system that you have within your airframe to benefit these types of users?
Well, look, I mean, we're working on it because we think it's key. We think it's really central to the way drones should be used. If you look at, I would say in general, what you see in the industrial space is the most forward-leaning customers are doing some really useful, valuable stuff with drones, where they've taken the time to train up, a set of internal pilots, or they're working with an expert external service provider, and through a lot of painstaking manual effort, are doing some useful stuff with drones, where they're getting useful data, they're doing inspections, they're tracking progress, they're doing security missions, but these things, the scale of the deployments that are happening, I think, are still small compared to what they should be. And we think that the key to getting things to sort of full deployment is just reducing friction and making them easier to use. I mean, it's a very, very simple idea. In a lot of ways, it's just the story of technology. And I think that autonomy and AI are central. We believe in making that happen. So, you know, a few examples from our customers. I mean, I talked about Eagle View doing house inspection. You know, roof inspection with drones has been talked about for 5 or 6 years now. People have dabbled in it. It's been deployed to a limited degree with some success. It hasn't really scaled. And one of the reasons it hasn't scaled is because it's hard to train insurance claims adjusters to be drone pilots. But it's pretty easy to give them a tool where you just go to the house, push a button, the thing takes off and scans the roof. And so I think, you know, that's one example. We see a similar pattern for bridge inspection, where sort of the world's greatest drone pilot might be able to fly a manual flown drone under a bridge without collision avoidance, without GPS, and not crash it, and maybe get some useful data. But with our visual navigation system, that becomes a very, very straightforward task that requires minimal training to complete. And you know, we see that story repeating in a lot of different industries. So we're incredibly excited about it, and we're also making major R&D investments here. So, you know, we've teased some of this, like you've heard us talk about a product called 3D Scan for fully autonomous capture. But you can expect to see a lot more of that to really bring the power of autonomy to industrial users.
And any time that you add technology to your core technology, there's a cost to you for development costs, and that cost can then be perceived by the user. So I want to ask a question about, you know, developing products for a military end user where there's certain specs. Rambo, you mentioned, you know, different radio frequencies and things like that you have to keep in mind. Is there any possibility that the military then overspecs these products so that when they're put back in the commercial market, they become either too expensive or they're not necessarily the most user-friendly for industrial users because they started in the government defense space? And anyone want to answer that? That could be for anyone.
I mean, I think I can speak to that briefly. I think there's a risk to that. I think the requirements in general for SRR were pretty reasonably well crafted. And you know, I think it's just ultimately on the product designer to make good decisions. And the end users for the military care a lot about pretty much the same things. Like, they don't want it to be hard to use. They want it to be super fast to take off. You know, they want good collision avoidance. So it's like the drive from the end user is there. And I think it's sort of a question of navigating the specifics of the requirements that are laid out with and making good product decisions to get to something that people are going to want to use.
Yeah. One of the bigger complaints about DJI airframes from the industrial world is like no-fly zones. I think Brendan Schulman did a thing for DJI by saying we want to impose no-fly zones on our airframes proactively to not get us into any trouble. But what that did is push people away where they weren't able to fly in areas that they've been approved without going through a process, and it's timely. So, you know, DJI in a sense shot themselves in the foot by doing so, by trying to preserve themselves from any sort of bad press later on. So are there things like that maybe military users don't want onboard recording, for instance, because they don't want removable drives? If the drone goes down, they don't want the bad guy to see where they were using it, or just things that you almost have to fundamentally keep in both versions of your product, but it does show that it was developed for a military end user.
But most of those kind of things, most of those kind of things are more software orientated than hardware orientated. So it's easier to enable or disable features from a software perspective than a hardware. And I mean, we're seeing that I think one thing we've seen with the SRR is that I think the military and the defense were starting to question as to why, from a consumer drone perspective or an enterprise drone perspective, could the latest technology be delivered quickly at a quarter of the price that they were traditionally used to paying, and by the time things arrived, they were quite out of date in a certain way. So I think it's made them look at it differently in terms of, from our perspective, taking our heritage of what we've done in consumer electronics or consumer drones, and then transitioning that into enterprise. And I think, as Adam said, and the panel probably agree, the enterprise user and the military user expect basically the same thing. So they expect robust, they expect high security, they expect cased sky in 50 seconds, whatever, all of these kind of commonalities now, where in the past, you know, it would, you know, you need 5 or 6 people to set up the drone in an hour to do all of these things. Of course, they don't have that. So I think the kind of features can be disabled and enabled very easily from a software perspective, whereas the hardware can be the same. Okay, we talked about the radio band, etc., but on the general basis, they can be the same from our point of view.
Rambo, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I was going to say that. So at the smaller end of Group 1, we're in a good space for crossover there. As you start to get larger, we see that divergence start to occur between civil and military. You know, a good example would be, you know, Puma is again the programmer or Raven rather, programmer record for the Army. You don't see a lot of Ravens commercially, right? You see a lot of sense flies out there commercially. So why is that? Well, you know, there are some things like radios. There are some hardware pieces that come along as well. Different GPSs, military GPSs. You know, we're happy to see that the cybersecurity knob is getting turned way up. We think that's something that the commercial market will benefit from. But I think SRR and Blue Force is a little bit unique on the smaller end of the market, and as you get larger, that will change.
So when you receive a reward for a bid from the government, are these like 3 to 5 year rewards where you're manufacturing the same thing year 1 as you are year 5 when the contract ends? Tobin, I know that you are part of the SBS program now. So does that make it so that technology and advancement of that technology is slowed because you're expected to deliver the same thing for the duration of a contract? And I'm honestly not asking this question as I know anything. I don't know, and I'm asking, I could be completely wrong in thinking that way.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly are design controls that the government imposes in order to maintain predictability and control that I think have the potential to slow design, but I think what's been really in slow innovation. But you know, I originally started working with the government and the Army back in 2007 with micro fuel cells, and seeing the change between then and now. You know, I think seeing that the Garmin GPSs were so much further along than the government issued GPSs they were fielding in Iraq. I think, you know, that and many others were a wake-up call that there has to be an integration of government processes and government security with the pace of innovation. And so looking at, for instance, how the Air Force handles their ATO process, authority to operate, they're very clear from the outset that there should be latitude for innovation and room for improvement. And, you know, even the SRR program, you know, I know when it was introduced by Matthew Borowski at the outset, he said, this is going to be like the cell phone industry, where there will be a tranche 1 and tranche 2 will be fast on its heels. And, you know, everyone's going to be forced to continue to push themselves and not rest on their laurels of the previous iteration. So, you know, from my perspective, I think the government has a challenge in that they have to, you know, their requirements, they have to make sure they understand what they're putting on their bases. But they've been handling that in a very mature, in my opinion, super impressive way to meld that with the pace of innovation.
So as you bring up government, this is going to kind of go into our last segment. I think we're doing pretty good on time. Earlier, someone mentioned policies that would unlock or enable the expansion of drone use, and I don't remember who said that, but are there a number of policies that the drone industry are waiting on so that we can get to work where we can see greater adoption and we have ways to unleash things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to do more with drone technology? And if so, what are those policies that we might be waiting on as an industry?
I make a couple of points here. I think one, I think drone policy and regulation has been a little bit of a punching bag for the industry. And I think a little bit of an excuse. You know, there's sort of been this theme of like, oh, we could be doing all this amazing stuff if only the regulators weren't holding us down. And generally, we don't subscribe to that. I think that regulation may not be everything that people would like it to be, but the FAA has incrementally chipped away and opened things up. And I think within the existing regulatory framework, there is way more opportunity to deliver useful products for customers than is currently being taken advantage of. And I think that the gaps there, tend to look at things through a product lens. I think there's a lot we can do from a product perspective to do a lot of useful stuff within the existing regulatory frameworks. I will say the thing that we were particularly passionate about this, the area where I think there's the biggest opportunity for growth, and this is something that I think I'm cautiously optimistic from what I've heard in folks on DC on this. I think if the US wants global leadership in small UAS, thinking about autonomy and crafting regulations that aren't sort of built around the one-to-one mapping from a pilot flying and looking at the drone is a pretty key one, because that's the thing that enables true scale and massive value for customers. And I think there's a lot of promising incremental progress happening there. We see a lot of this with our customers where they've gotten waivers to do things that they previously couldn't do. But I think that, classically referred to as beyond visual line of sight flight, which kind of means a lot of different things, but I think that's a pretty big one. But I think we're moving in the right direction there.
Anyone else want to jump in on that? George, you look like you're pre-saying things.
Well, no, it's an inflection point that we're going through now. And like Chris mentioned earlier, several years back, before we went through another inflection point, you had several operators per drone. It took a long time to set up. You had a pilot, and camera operator, a spotter. Today, it's 1-to-1, right? One operator per drone. Super easy for a single person to operate. And now the inflection point is having a single operator, or we'll see what the future holds, but a single operator controlling a whole fleet of systems. Like Adam says, regulation today, I think, allows quite a bit of latitude. I think as we continue to progress and show regulators data around autonomy and how it can be implemented, then things will continue to improve.
Gotcha. And I think one of the reasons that us six are talking now, and something that has happened over the past handful of months, is the Department of Commerce blacklisting DJI specifically in name, and just the push away from Chinese manufactured drones. Now, what's interesting about this blacklisting is that they didn't talk about cybersecurity concerns as the forefront of why this move was made. It was human rights violations, right? And so there's a chance that DJI goes, fixes their human rights violations, and then says, okay, what about now? Are we good to go? There's also 80% of the market share over the past 5 years has been buying DJI products. And so police departments, fire departments, railroads, etc., have these fleets of DJI airframes that, if entirely banned, they shelve them. And does that risk them saying, well, we're not going to invest back into that shit again until this is matured and we know that there's stability? What I offer is that you 5 manufacturers, being as far as you are with the federal government, being indicated as blue sUAS, are the stable choice for drone technology going forward. Would you agree with that sentiment? And then anything on like the China stuff that maybe I simplified, or ways that we can look at this Chinese manufacturing of drones situation? Chris?
I'll mention on the Chinese topic in terms of, the perception or not, it's not a myth in terms of the cybersecurity topic. I mean, there's research going back to 2017 on security breaches. There's stuff with 3 independent research firms in 2020. So there's a multiple of weaknesses and vulnerabilities that have been exposed. So it's more than a perception. It's this is the reality of what we're living in today, and the infrastructure or whatever being inspected and reporting back to wherever it may be or maybe not in China is of course a risk. What the SRR and the blue sUAS does is, as I mentioned earlier in the webinar, is that it puts a framework around and really puts higher up the agenda the cybersecurity and the importance of privacy as well as cybersecurity. So this, we believe, really helps the not only the military or the defense user, but the enterprise user have faith that the industry is moving forward with this framework, and that the drones that have been tested for the Blue sUAS for military purposes, they have all of the ingredients that the military expect from a cyber security. And why shouldn't an enterprise have the same level of security? Because they're the ones that are surveying the critical infrastructure or agricultural, whatever it may be, of the countries. So we believe that these two things added together will really and globally the markets are waking up to this topic. You know, this is and it was a bit of an elephant in the room. You know, people were sort of talking about it and not talking about it. Well, this is what it is, and we're welcoming this very much, and this is why we've been very fortunate to be part of the SRR program and building the ANAFA USA in the USA. So this is very important for us.
So sometimes when I sit here and listen to things and I want to ask a rebuttal question on the fly, I get myself in trouble by free-handing a question that might come out strange. But if instead of Frank Wong coming out of Hong Kong and creating really cool drone technology in 2013, it was a guy by the name of Ito Yoshida in Japan, and the drone was doing the exact same thing that a DJI drone is doing today with cybersecurity concerns, would we be as worried about it because our data is going to Japan as it is China, or is this truly a geopolitical problem?
And I think it's kind of I'll touch on that. I mean, I think that the root of the problem is Chinese government policy. Like the primary concern, whether it's human rights or cybersecurity, it's DJI is beholden to Chinese government policy, which is it's a really hard problem. I mean, the company doesn't, Chinese companies don't have autonomy with respect to like what information they share with the Chinese government and what Chinese government agencies they work with, which are involved in human rights abuses. So I certainly think that it's, the Chinese government is the central piece of this, which is a hard thing for any company based there to overcome.
So you do think that this goes beyond just DJI, because I think that DJI probably included, but other Chinese manufacturers will just put a U.S. headquarters with a U.S. guy ahead of it, and they'll try to show that there's some separation of communication. And now we have Chinese manufacturers existing in the U.S. Vying for the same programs that you're working in. Is that a possibility?
Well, I think if anything, I'd argue you see the opposite. If anything, I think you see sort of a retrenchment from DJI to pull back more, centralizing the company and more control.
That's all time. That's all time, brother. I mean, but maybe you're right. You're right. And I shouldn't say that I know anything, but I mean, when you see your largest market for industrial products going away because they have concerns, if you relaunch a company called IJD in the US that has a US guy that's showing up to all the meetings and is now this not elephant out of the room but in the room, and you have as much knowledge as they have about creating products, and you have really talented people like Brendan Schulman that are dealing with government officials, if you can toe that line like Chris Anderson did with Unique. He took Unique and said, let me make you American, and it didn't quite work well. But that was, there were loopholes to follow. So why wouldn't DJI or Autel or other Chinese manufacturers do the same?
Right. Well, let me talk about the other side of this, because I think that certainly the cybersecurity and the human rights abuses associated with the Chinese government that DJI is involved in, like that is concerning. And I think that's resulted in a lot of US policy. But the other side of this is just like the natural evolutions of the product and the technology. And so Skydio 2, you can just the proof is on YouTube. You can just go see customers flying it and using it and talking about it and doing comparisons against DJI drones. And in what many users value most and what the product can do, it's superior to anything that DJI has out there. And it's superior in kind of an obvious way. It's super smart, it's really easy to use, and it can do things autonomously. And that transition, we've been, the consumer space is arguably the hardest. That's where price matters the most. That's where DJI has the strongest footprint. And we've won there head to head on the strength of a technology shift. And we're bringing that technology shift to the enterprise now. So I think and we've been winning deals, before the concerns over DJI really took off. So I think that it is certainly an accelerant, and it is certainly, it's a tailwind for us, and I think everybody here. But I would also, I think about, again, go to analogies to other technology spaces. If you think about like the phone industry in the early 2000s, Nokia and Samsung were dominant, and people thought that that's just the way it was always going to be. And Silicon Valley had kind of like missed the wave, and that's just not how it played out. The devices became more about software, and iPhone and Android became dominant. And I think I'm not saying that things are going to play out exactly like that for the drone industry, but I think it's still nascent, and that kind of technology shift is certainly happening, and that creates a shakeout, no matter who the players are.
Yeah. So we have 5 minutes left, and on that analogy front, for a while I was running a podcast, and I would ask people on the podcast. George was a part of that.
Raise your hand if DJI canceled your podcast.
Yeah, DJI did cancel George's podcast and made it so that we couldn't release that episode. But maybe I'll pull it out of the archives now, 2.5 years later. But I'd ask the question, in cell phone terms, where are we at? Are we at, the Nokia that you could play Snake on with the green and black screen? Are we at the first iPhone? And when I asked this question 3 years ago, I would say we're at that Nokia phone. It's not a car phone. It's not arduous. It's not complicated. The programs make sense. It's not cost prohibitive. But I think that U5 and the technology that you've built really have brought us out of that kind of Stone Age Nokia cell phone and made some smarts to it. And I think that should be noted, that the progression from the last time we were able to hang out at a commercial UAV expo or exponential or whatever has been significant, even under the darkness of 2020. That's more of a comment than a question. I get to say some stuff too. So let's just do some final thoughts. We have 4 minutes left. So if you guys have anything, I think it's kind of cheesy, because then it's like, do you have something to say? And it's like, not really, but the other guy said something. But, just anything related to where we're headed as an industry, reasons for people to hold on to hope. I know there's a lot of resellers that I've been a big proponent of, that group has a lot of the market share, and a lot of the people buying drone technology, they're marketing too. And I had someone ask, well, what about us? And I could ask that question if you want to respond to that too, but maybe we just go in a circle, final thoughts, make people feel good, and then we'll sign off. Tobin, do you want to start? You're on mute. Second time, brother.
Yeah, all right, Drake. Let me just respond to your comments. It's kind of fresh in my head with regards to kind of where we are as an industry. I certainly agree with everything that Adam said, that we are nascent still. It is the early days. A lot's going to change. And I think a really interesting question for me is, is the comparison to a cell phone, which is sort of this very personal and device you're very aware of, or is it perhaps more to a computer? And you think about the transition that computers have made from the very personal device to how much compute happens without you even being aware of it. You spin up perhaps thousands of processors in the cloud, and you don't even know how many processors you spun up. And I think that is where the drone industry will go, is the abstraction of the drone itself. And layers between the need and the drone, and thinking about that scenario, for me it really is just indicative of how far we have to go and how early we are in the industry. So as a player who gets to be part of that, and whatever that feature may be, that or something else, I for one, I'm just super excited and honored to be able to be a part of the unfolding future, and really look forward to having the chance to work with all of you and helping to realize that.
Well, Tobin, if someone was in a coma for the entirety of 2020 and just woke up and they were really interested in the drone industry and they're trying to see the status of how things are looking, I think that your background would probably tell a very bleak story. But yeah, we're in a good place. That was just a personal comment for you, but thanks for taking part of this specifically, Tobin, and showing that you have you are a humble and straight up guy that wants to show your basement rather than be like George and put a virtual background. No way.
This is the Salt Lake Valley.
Oh snap! Well, then your office looked great. It looked like it was round, and I've been to your offices before, so I was like, "That's not your office." How amazing is that? Okay, Chris, you're next. Any final words?
I'll take the mobile phone analogy, and I'll put that a different way. Is to if you think of where we came from. So 10 years, the AR drone. So what was this? This could have been an analog brick, something like a Motorola 8000 or something like this. If we think of where we've come in relatively a short period of time, and especially how things have accelerated over the last few years, when we think of all of the different evolutions compared to, and I remember very well the launch of what for us was our first consumer drone, which at the time was something that hadn't been done before. And when we think now, and I think very much on the enterprise point of view, that we're really at the beginning of that, the real usage and the additional power of the software and what we can really do in terms of the computing power and all these sorts of things. It's we're at the brink of what we can do with this. Is my closing points on this.
Perfect. Appreciate you being here, Chris. Thanks for taking the time. Adam, do you want to go next? Final thoughts?
I'm going to take this in just a totally shameless plug direction, but I will say
should have started with that. We should have started with that because now Tobin and Chris are going to be like, "Oh, damn, I didn't do that." Go ahead, Adam.
No, we're one of the things that has been most exciting for me, and it's been challenging in COVID, but is getting to spend time on the ground with customers and seeing what they're doing and seeing them deploy our products and figuring out ways that we can make that work better. And we spent a lot of time this year building out our customer success and support and sales teams to really engage deeply with these folks. We've got industry experts in all the industries that we serve. And if there's folks on this call that are thinking about standing up their drone program or are thinking about replacing what they're doing with DJI, we would love to work with you on that. If you go to our website, it's pretty easy to find, and we'd love to chat.
You doing a DJI buyback program, Adam?
We've thought about it.
Oh, okay, that was a joke, but
no, no, all ideas have been considered. We're not doing it now, but we're working with a lot of folks that are replacing fleets of 5, 10, 50, 100 drones and seeing pretty amazing results.
Maybe there's some Biden money for that. Executive order, all DJI units replaced at 50%. Anyway, thanks, Adam, for being a part of this. Rambo?
Yeah, sure. So when we launched Altavian in 2011, there was an impetus because the regulations were going to come out in 2012, and we had to make sure that we got our product going. And by 2013 or 14, there'd just be drones everywhere. Very wrong. So we are now. Oh, it's 2021. I can say it. So we're 5 years now since 107 has happened. So just at the beginning of when sort of wide scale operations have been even contemplated. And even then, we're still working on flight over people, beyond line of sight, the different 107 exclusion categories that will really open up that market. And so I would venture to say that we are still very early in this, not just from Group 1, but from all UAS. Right now we go and pull up Google Earth and, we just kind of expect that you're going to be able to see new maps from satellites and manned airplanes. At some point here in the future, that'll be a Group 2 drone that just flies across the U.S. every week and just updates your maps. And so I think the opportunities here are enormous, and we are just at the beginning.
Perfect. Thanks, Rambo. Real quick, Chris, where are you located? Where are you right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm in my office.
Where geographically are you?
Oh, geographically, I'm in Melbourne, in Australia.
So I do want to give a special thanks to Chris representing the Parrot team and it being like 4 a.m. for you or something like that.
Yes.
on Friday. So happy Friday to you, sir.
Thank you.
So I did want to point that out, that I know you're making specific sacrifices in being a part of this, but then going to the most beautiful place of all the participants in Salt Lake City, Utah, my man George, in a very nice office, real without virtual background. Final thoughts from you, sir.
I think life is good. I think the timing is great for each of us to do something special here in the industry. I'm excited to grow Teal alongside everyone here, and our product is available now. We're excited to work with partners, resellers, and get this technology out there. Thanks for putting this together, Randall. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Yeah, it was my pleasure. Obviously, a huge honor for me to be able to pull you guys together and have this chat and be the person that's done the least to make this magic happen within the industry. But thanks for letting me be kind of the center of it. Yeah. So if there's further questions, feel free to reach out to these guys. I'm sure that their emails are easy enough to find. If you need to get a hold of them, I'm happy to help you spam their inboxes. So just reach out to me. But thanks for taking your time, everyone that's participated and sat in with us. Thanks for that. And then I'll get this video posted, and hopefully the conversation will continue. But with that said, take care, guys. Thanks again. We'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randall.